So I don't think there's a single IP out there more fitting to be the central theme for a Five Nights at Freddy's fan game than Chuck E. Cheese. I mean, come on, it's Chuck E. Cheese. Who do you think this bad bastard was based off? Okay, fair point. Though Chucky was and has easily been the more recognizable restaurant chain mascot for the past 40 plus years, even existing for a short time before Showbiz Pizza Place, under his initial Pizza Time Theater design. I don't need to emphasize the popularity this brand has accumulated over time and how much his make-believe band more than likely contributed influence for Five Nights at Freddy's performing robot cast, especially with the rat's infamous dead-eyed stare, occasional performance hiccups, and unsettlingly unlifelike cohorts. The inspiration for a potential original horror game based on those factors, with robots gaining sentience and coming to life, was overwhelming enough for just that to actually become tangible down the line. Or if straight up copyright infringement is more your style, Five Nights at Chuck E. Cheese, shoved onto Game Jolts on February 21st, 2015 by Jolly T, was an unabashedly passionate game, taking the idea of a Chuck E. Cheese horror game absolutely literally, with some less than flattering visuals, a pitched down fun guy, and was also entirely made in MS Paint from the looks of things. I'd be hard pressed to call this a bad fan game. Yeah, I'm sorry. FNAF was some bunk, half-baked mess that randomly flashed YouTube channel icons in place of the only two pieces at the core and the entire main office of the game, though this was early 2015, so any piece of media with the words night, at, and 5 in the title were to content creators what water is to most living organisms. Deathly essential. And for this reason alone, the game quickly became fairly popular for its time, and then nothing happened for 6 years. Fast forward to late 2020, and Five Nights at Treasure Island, a FNAF fan game stuck in development hell since 2014, was polished up, stamped, and sent out to the world by Radiance Team, a relatively recent game developer. And to my surprise, this thing had been transformed from its humble origins as a scruffy Blender internal engine looking ass demo into a truly fantastic final outcome for a Five Nights at Freddy's fan game. And while I'd go back and rephrase a few points here and there and make a couple more notes on the state of the gameplay of the thing, I gave Treasure Island a pretty positive final verdict last year. It was a solid revival of a weirdly beloved cult classic that was received genuinely positively. And then they did it again. Five Nights at Chuck E. Cheese is Rebooted, released to Game Jolts on September 4th, 2021. What happened here? Hello? Purely from skimming the official game screenshots, yeah, there's gotta be more going on here. At least more than just revamped visuals and a fresh look of paint, as welcomed of a change as that is. An era-appropriate analog tape security system and the original Chuck E. Cheese Pizza Time Theater portrait show concept, this shit is oddly specific, seemingly going for a very distinctly retro feel. And with that in mind, there has to be some fundamental difference in the gameplay here, with such a peculiar tonal shift. I think I'll start sobbing if there isn't. And hey, looks like Jolly Teeth themselves were recruited for the project also. That's always sick to see, the original devs for these things acting as executive producer and helping out with various aspects of development. So past the radiant splash screen and a personal threat, we're met with this iteration of 70s Chucky specifically freaking out on the title screen, which bears a striking cheap analog CCTV aesthetic down to the grainy monochrome footage and the options UI, like you're adjusting the settings on a CRT or something. I do enjoy that. Hitting start, Sue wants us, Fred, to take the night shift due to her family being sucked into an interdimensional vortex, and we're thrown into night one, immediately being stared down by the core 5-pack of brats we'll be dealing with in a dirtied, very 70s looking showroom, in stark contrast to the assumedly modern look of the original game. The office space seems to be very inspired by the shelf-styled shows or portrait format of the original Chuck E. Cheese restaurants, and capitalizing on the very first rough-around-the-edges execution at that. Though instead of having each character spread around the perimeter of the main dining area, they're clustered together in front of you, similar to Popco, starting off the enemies in the same room as yourself. And each animatronic on show here does a decent job at imitating their first to second generation look and feel here, complete with Jasper T. Jowls, Pasquale, Mr. Munch, Helen Honey, and the headliner, Charles Entertainment Cheese. Jesus Christ, again? Like, specifically, this is the second time. What, does just speaking the name of an anthropomorphic rat just summon it into my abode now?
Hey, there's some boneyard you got here, eye socket.
No. We are not doing this shit. Last time I had a muroid mofo enter this garage, he trashed my backdrop and indirectly kicked off a chain of events that caused a cataclysmic...
Oh, sounds like you're on the run from the pigs too, coolhead. Listen, all you want is a fat puff of the old Nick. It'll soothe your brains and get you thinking straight enough to bounce this joint and skedaddle on out of here. You and me both, sister.
Where in the goddamn hell is the zipper on this thing, Mickey, you undead corporate bitch? I am not that gullible.
I'll throw in a copy of Sonic Spinball.
Oh, what did you leave me hanging for? That's another to add to the collection. Usually.
Corporate? I'm what they like to call a hot ticket item in the old industry, but I ain't no puppet. I'm the only big cheese around here, and one of the only things in this world that matters to me is my addiction-free stogies. Walk with me, Motion. Let me show you the wonders these babies will do.
Are you just here to sell me tobacco?
Hey, sweet talker. Ain't nobody saying nothing about no selling.
Goodness gravy, at least the other guy who showed up tried to scam me out of my life savings. You're just a more pathetic version of him. I mean, you gotta be able to come up with a more imminent threat than 10 years maybe of my lifespan.
Hey, what's the big idea, bub? These things are completely health risk-free.
Really?
After we stop shoveling asbestos into the rolling paper.
Okay, look, if you're gonna try to advertise me something, at least do it in a modern and engaging way, and maybe with something people don't associate with the terminal disease, like, I don't know, Opera GX for example, which just happens to be the world's first browser built for gaming, and that if you haven't been playing Club Penguin's Kart Surf on this thing, who do you think you are?
A ciggy dealer.
Shot it, Blood. I bloody knew it! And let's go ahead and express the fact that Opera GX is packed with features built to streamline and enhance your gaming experience, but fam, what if I want to surf till I buff? Bath. Well, hey, GX has got you covered with its integrated social media channels like WhatsApp, Twitter, and especially Discord, letting me scream and stream off the rails with ease, baby. If I want to info dump the entire history of the development of the PlayStation 1 while simultaneously theorizing the true culprits of the Bite of 87 to my friends on Discord, Opera GX has got my back. They have no idea how easy they've made it for me to torment those around me. But hey, torture ain't torture if you ain't doing it in style, which is why GX's animated wallpapers are a godsend. These things run smoothly in the background of whatever you cheeky little shits are up to, keeping performance buttery slick. And for those of you wanting to swap over to Opera GX from another browser without losing any settings such as browsing history and cookies, that too has been made as easy as browser settings, synchronization, import bookmarks and settings, and imports. A measly price to pay to retain my several hundred bookmarks detailing just where on earth I hid those bodies. And hey, if you're switching from Chrome and you're worried about losing access to those sweet extensions, Opera GX features an add-on making Chrome extensions entirely compatible. But if you thought Opera GX could be contained within the mortal shell of your personal computer, suck your nan, because GX Mobile can be connected to your desktop browser via the Flow feature, allowing you to send videos, files, links, and more between browsers in a single click. And just like the desktop version, GX Mobile's got its own GX Corner with a game release calendar, gaming news, and free mobile games. So when I'm freezing out in the back alley of a Tesco, there's no excuse not to crack that app open to entertain myself before I develop frostbite. Yoink Opera GX for free today, boys, girls, and every friends, link in the description. You know, advertise shit to people like that.
Now here in 1977, I ain't heard of no web browser. Oh my god, is that gasoline?
I am an arsonist with no restraint. We are introduced to the facility through a phone call that is nothing out of the ordinary for these fan games, giving us a general debriefing of the main mechanics and even a smidge of story if we're lucky. An interesting detail to note is that this dude does give us a bit of context for a potential post-night minigame, asking us to head down to storage to pick up some things that need restocking. Though concerning your immediate environment, the name of the game here is to flip through each of the 5 channels listed on your security monitor, watching out for a rogue Chuck E. Cheese, and shooing him away by listening out for an audio cue and shuffling to a hand-operated gate to shut him out. This thing is essentially the FNAF 4 door mechanic, needing to stand idly by in order for it to be effective. The difference here being that simply reaching the handle ain't enough. You gotta pull it down and wait for the wire mesh to slowly roll out. It's admittedly a bit tense, staring out into the dark, unsure of if you'll have the barrier down in time to ward off the haunted mascot. No audio cue for Chucky you're leaving though, I just found touching the bottom of the gate to the floor to do the job just fine. Look, it's fine, I get it, object's permanence is a bitch. One detail I love here though is the entire concept of animatronic puppets bolted to the waist, breaking themselves off of their stands and clutching at the ground to pull themselves towards you. Strangely enough, this is like an incredibly specific idea I had years ago but never implemented into anything, so Radiance, I'll be in touch about royalties. And hey, 6 minutes of deterring a tar-lunged rat later, we're whisked off to storage with a flashlight in tow and a quota to meet, with a list of items to yoink off the shelving units directly in front of you, in addition to a strike system, ticking down for each incorrect item you click on, except never mind because I just received a jump scare from something a bit disgusting. This is Krusty the Cat, a very discontinued Chuck E. Cheese character, and also the bane of my existence, purely down to the fact that I am as stupid idiot moron. First time round with this Garbo, you're given a tooltip at the bottom of the screen encouraging you to hit space to swivel around and oh well, sod that. Apparently, shining your flashlight in this liminal space looking ass nightmare zone behind you is crucial given the fact that this milky-eyed son of a gun makes it a point to sneak up on and promptly beat the ever-loving shit out of you if you don't. Hold on, let me just... Yeah, I'm beginning to think the chain-smoking murderer rat is having a negative influence on people. Anyway, successfully collecting each appropriate item and keeping the cat at bay will grant you a temporary 2 AM skip, not unlike FNAF 4's fun with plush trap reward. These things seemingly don't get any more challenging between the core gameplay segments though. If you can do it first try, it's easy as pie, bake me a cake till my arteries ache, but I also personally think the entire minigame is kinda futile, given the fact that the learning curve in this game is bonkers unfair and you'll die on the 2 AM skip anyway. More on that in a bit. Over the course of the next 4 nights, we're slapped in the nearest orifice with an even bigger bag of tricks than just cheesy old dick over here in the form of additional enemy mechanics and an extra counter defense to the stage cool, emitting an audio cue designed to call back rogue animatronics, of which was lifted directly from a 1977 videotape featuring one of the very first public Pizza Time theater performances that is unironically kinda cool. This thing is effective against Monkey, Donkey, and Funky over here, returning them back to their starting positions once they're active in your office, often accompanied by a distinct glitch-ridden audio cue. Giles will buzz off and pretend to breathe oxygen for about a minute before dragging himself back onto your desk to stay you down, at which point holding down the switch will get him to sod off. Pasquale will cut the fat and get straight to the eye contact, but is otherwise identical. Helen Henny, on the other hand, after maneuvering the vicinity, will stick herself to either far side of the room, accompanied by a separate audio cue, but regardless, the most difficult to identify and successfully deal with. Night 2 specifically directs your attention to Channel 4, and after complaints of a suspected infestation believed to have originated from the back room, asks you to keep an eye out for a rat running around the building or something. Haha, lol. This silly mascot costume bitch will wander around the cameras with absolutely no way to turn him back around, meaning you'll have to check on him regularly to prevent him from progressing any further, losing him entailing a bit of a chase on the cameras given the lack of a map, and Mr. Munch just started killing me. I was on night 3 for over an hour. There's a huge communication flaw here. Some things in Five Nights at Chuck E. Cheese's Rebooted are just very poorly or straight up seldom explained to you. I had absolutely no idea I had to actively seek out and find Discount Grimace on the cameras, which is how you get him to return to his portrait, by the way. I'm guessing the idea was that by introducing Mascot Chucky's mechanic the night prior, the idea was that you would probably lose him and have to dash around the cameras to find him again. I'm assuming they thought the player would be doing the same thing for night 3 and just happened to stumble across Munch in the cams. Except when that did happen, I had no idea what was happening, who that was, or what I'd just done. Speaking of, Mascot Chucky was also an enemy I had no idea how to ward off. Now, it is very nonchalantly mentioned to watch for anything in Channel 4, as that room hadn't been cleaned out for a while and yada yada yada, but it is not clear enough that you do need to just stare at the dude during downtime as much as possible, as letting him get to your office is essentially game over, disabling your flashlight and preventing you from pulling the gate down. Like a more annoying version of this little shit. I figured just occasionally viewing the costume dude was enough to satisfy the incredibly vague quota of just keep an eye on the enemy, you know, like I would in any other FNAF game. I just figured the advice was synonymous with, watch out for those pesky animatronics. But it's hardly made apparent that slowing him down is paramount to keeping him away. That much could have been conveyed a fair bit clearer, methinks. Also, I totally thought that the Chucky costume was the robot for a bit, and that if I struggled with the gate enough eventually, it'd just... Ironically, the one enemy I was actively warned about due to the fact that her behavior goes entirely unexplained was Helen Henny, who I ended up having absolutely zero trouble with at all due to the fact that at that point I was instinctively using the stage call during tiny pockets of downtime between dealing with enemies anyhow, ergo if she was in the office she'd get dealt with all the same, ergo I barely ever lost to her or ever really had to keep track of her location. That and the fact that she's got her own audio key for entering the office anyway, so I just hit the switch whenever I heard it, lol. Mamma mia, Pasquale, I cook a pizza, his jump scare is deep fried golden Freddy, let's talk about that. Yeah, the jump scare animations on these dudes are real frickin' shabby at times. The lighting in some of these sequences too do not do him justice. I think that and a combination of some questionable materials don't have him looking as good as they could. Don't get me wrong, these guys can look fantastic in some shots, some of the camera and office renders especially. Just the up close and brightly lit renders don't put them in the best light. But
Oh, okay, Shades. You wanna know how many insults I've chucked at you? Answer, zilch.
You're still here? Go away.
Some roadshow you got going on here, cheese breath. You wanna try and slander me some more? It's difficult enough as it is nowadays with all this hearsay about addiction and lung cancer. You know where the real danger lies, bub? That's right, marijuana. I won't lose out to those fat cat green bean machines motion, and I ain't going out of business. I'm fighting for me life.
Chill out, dog. I like the game so far. What's it gonna take for you to sort on out of here, huh? A kick in the tail? A fatty puff?
Would ya?
No.
Come on, kid. Just a little exposure. That's all I need. You got an audience, I know you do. Just a small hit. What on earth was that?
A small hit.
Go to hell.
Well, hey, even if the character models aren't as appealing as they could be in a non-diegetic sense, there's still a lot to appreciate here in the visuals department. I think the main lookout area and each of the viewable camera POVs portray that quite nicely, fit with the same radiance polish we saw in Treasure Island. The security system especially, I love the attention to detail here. The monochrome cameras too, exactly the kind of thing you'd realistically expect from an actual cheap monitoring getup with only 5 active cameras no less. Further pushing the narrative of this place being maybe a smaller, more humble location, implying the enemies are never too far from your stance. And hey, important details like the night and time are directly baked into the camera footage. That kind of thing is always appreciated. I think the exclusion of any kind of a map too, while adding to the realism, also just feels a bit refreshing, as this game proves 99% of these things do not need a map cluttering up the screen. Just throw a list of locations on the side, you'll get the point across. And the interior itself, packed tight with some authentic looking pong cabinets, busy furniture, even small elements like the suspended decoration. There's just enough detail tucked into each corner of the map here, and I feel like overall the presentation is nothing I'm itching to see anything more out of, you know? I really think it hits that perfect balance, giving the entire location a bit of a cramped, dank feel, great for a spooky atmosphere. But hey, as far as the main campaign goes, that is it. This is one of the only Five Nights at Freddy's fan games that actually stays true to the first half of its name, with the only extra gameplay content to follow in the form of an obligatory custom night. But first, extras. These are fun. Characters that you, unused and making of segments, those are always welcome. The ability to replay the post-night minigame sections. You guys, this part of the extras menu, it's where I discovered you could actually turn around and seek out Krusty before he kills you, after I'd already beaten the sudden game. And finally, a few gameplay enhancers to spice things up for those who want to go for those extra completion marks in the predetermined custom night challenges. Speaking of, custom night features only 4 additional unlockable characters here compared to Radiance's previous entry, though I do like the fact that half the potential roster isn't purely limited to an extra mode this time, only almost half are. An overall smaller frenzy does fit this more bite-sized game, and with the implied smaller scale of the place, it does make a cozier roster feel right at home here. The extra enemies in question are locked behind beating challenges in a set order, the first challenge Nightmare ramping every available enemy's AI up to the max. Hey, you bet your ass I couldn't get past this shit. I am sorry, but the amount of times I would run into RNG garbage where the game kept expecting me to deal with both Chucky at the gate and somebody pissing on the desk in front of me was wholly too much of a recurring issue for me to feel like my efforts weren't entirely futile here. At least we got a neat authentic showreel in the background to gawk at between dying instantly. Maybe there was something I just wasn't getting here, and I'm sure that with enough trial and error, this is an entirely possible mode to beat. But from night 5 to this serving as an essential part of the game if you want to see the extra content for yourself, the difficulty spike just ain't something I'm vibing with. Had it been a later challenge instead? Sure. I guess slowly introducing tougher and tougher challenges leading up to a 620 mode with anything more of a headache shoved in after that would have made for a more organic and entirely more fair difficulty curve. It wasn't though, so... My dignity died when I missed the fact that I could turn around on the storage segments the entire time. My self-worth is already plummeted, let me have this. So, the additional 4 foes you're able to face up against here are quote-unquote modern Chucky, taken straight from the original game. No, I mean literally the exact character from that original game. Oversaturated PNGs in the original game overscreen and toe that even changes the custom ball pointer to the default mouse graphic literally just for authenticity. Who is essentially just the more aggressive Chuck E. Cheese, a faceless animatronic Billy Bob from Showbiz Pizza Place who'll hang out parallel to the gates kept at bay via flashbanging. Modern Mr. Munch, click on him and he'll sod off. And Dolly Dimples, charge her piano by holding control. There is literally no penalty for holding it too long. Successfully losing to her is a bitch. And hey, the extra characters are fun firecrackers in the mix. Hell, the synergy these dudes had with the OG6 surprisingly make for a really decent challenge in my opinion here. Setting everybody to a 10 or 15 and going ham was honestly great to mess around in, despite the 10 dudes I was dealing with in such a confined space. And I think the reason I never felt too stupidly overwhelmed is down to the fact that Five Nights at Chuck E. Cheese's Rebooted gets one thing right with its gameplay most good fan games seem to understand. a balance between action-based and reaction-based mechanics. Action-based mechanics are game elements that require you to actively seek out a threat and deal with it accordingly, like mascot Chucky and Mr. Munch for example. Enemies on the cameras that require your active input through staring intently or skimming through feeds like a maniac. You need to remember to deal with these dudes without the game nudging you. Reaction-based mechanics consider the opposite, waiting for the game specifically to alert you of an enemy's presence so they can be obliterated on sight, like Chucky's audio cue encouraging you to shut him out, or Jowl's perpetually attempting to sneeze, at which point you're obviously aware, oh, now this motherfucker wants me dead. Five Nights at Treasure Island, on the other hand, was a game full of reactionary mechanics, and I think, in retrospect, that was one of the biggest issues I had with that game, even if I had trouble identifying it at the time. But hey, Five Nights at Chuck E. Cheese's Rebooted fixes that issue, so, roll credits. Oh hey, there I am, rightfully credited for my patented animatronic debolting itself idea. I take payment in dignity points, I'm low on those.
Oh yeah! Taking all the credit for yourself, hotshot. Stealing from the needy. And for what?
Content.
Oh, well I ain't very content with your big tricks and your ass full of sticks. Hokey pokey and a glass full of ogie. Take your plagiarism off the board, wench.
You got an ass. And you're ugly as well.
Yeah, caramba. What's the big idea, wacky sticks? You've been nothing but hoitful to me since I crashed here. All show and no go, Mo. All show and no go.
You broke into my house and I threatened you with arson. Point to the issue.
I offered you ciggies, I did. Oh, and you're going to repay me like this?
You know what, Chuck? Can I call you Chuck? Whatever, I'm already monologuing. I think you might just be right. Maybe, just maybe, I've been a tad brash judging all these crazy cuckoo bananas characters that come crashing into my abode uninvited before I've really gotten to know them. You know what? I think it's high time I make amends. Sorry, mate. Sorry, bub.
You murdered?
Sorry, insulation. Actually, on second thought, Mickey is an evil corporate jerk. Sorry. No, not this one. Oh, yeah, fair. That is the third time in 2 months. What the fuck? Well, hey, glad that's taken care of. Are you kidding me?
There's at least 7 people watching right now, bucko, and they're all destined to be brainwashed. Stogie-hooked maniacs faster than you can
Oh my god,
say.
sod it up! So, Five Nights at Chuck E. Cheese is rebooted. As far as revitalizing an older fan game goes, it's hard not to deliver praise where praise is due yet again to Radiance here. Cooking up just a good, fun time with a cocktail of mechanics and intriguing settings and fluid gameplay with only a tad order of bullshit on the side. The game does have its issues. Mechanics can be super unclear. I think some of the animations and renders are weirdly unpolished. Dealing with enough of these mofos at once on a cranked up difficulty introduces us to RNG City. Though these are all minor gripes in the grand scheme of things, and I think Rebooted does a swell job at finally executing a 7-year-old idea in a way I don't think anybody ever expected, but oh my god does it make sense! If Disney characters in a horror setting made sense, then this shit makes bank. But Chuck E. Cheese Five Nights at Freddy's Fangame, like peanut butter and store-brand jelly, except I swear it works way better than you'd think. Speaking of, one thing I did feel like was a tad lackluster here was the apparent void of any real scares. Now you might be asking yourself, gomotion, it's a Five Nights at Freddy's Fangame, what the hell were you expecting? And to that I say, not to be truly scared in the slightest, and I'm still disappointed. I kid, though I feel like these early Chuck E. Cheese characters specifically just have so much potential to be genuinely creepy monsters in some kind of a horror setting, just not in the context of a repetitive point-and-click strategy game. The whole slow burn fear of animatronic characters coming to life shtick came and went years ago in terms of what I think makes a good spooky atmosphere in the context, but I really do feel like there's untapped potential for horror on the opposite end of the spectrum. These primitive pizza time theater shows featured these early characters cackling, hooting, and screaming at each other. Exactly the kind of overexcited, rowdy energy some kind of paranormal robot way too excited to be tracking you down could exhibit to make for some truly horrifying moments. Like it can't take enough pleasure in the idea of killing you, laughing and laughing in a state of total mania. That's a whole other topic I'd love to cover sometime soon, and I know that realistically, A, FNAF games are strategy first, horror second, and B, this kind of horror would hardly work to scare the player in such a swift-paced, already bustling environment. See, what I'm trying to get at is that I'll do anything to get a DMCA if it means I get to see the funny rat give me an aneurysm. Also, there's a story here. I've hardly mentioned this shit because nothing much sunk in other than the animatronics are self-aware that they're being replaced, and this cutscene I would have gotten for beating Custom Night's True Nightmare Challenge that I do not understand, but I am seldom convinced anybody's coming to this thing for the sweet, sweet lore of Chuck E. Cheese, and I think that much is developer intended. I'm not sure if the same can be said for Oblatus Casa, Radiance's next bout in the indie scene, seemingly straying far from the FNAF-based gameplay in favor of something a little more story-rich perhaps, in what looks to be a more traditional point-and-click. But hey, whatever the hell lies in store for these dudes in the future of rap-based horror, it's clear there's a quality threshold Radiance have set for themselves, and breaking away from the Fangame revival scene in favor of a more typically original approach to gameplay will be an interesting context in which to see them maintain that. And as far as a louder, more ambitious animatronic-based horror setting could go, there is a hell of a lot to be pulled from the concept in my opinion, and something I truly hope to see incorporated into a survival horror down the road or something. And when that does inevitably happen, my contact info is noodlegetsbitches@yahoo.com. Again, royalties can be sent in the form of dignity points. My bank just thinks I'm a bitch and I'm too afraid to correct them.